Hello, everyone. We wanted to thank you all for coming. First of all, thank you for joining our room, and we will get started in a minute.
All right. Hello, everyone. With hopes that everyone who plans to join is here at the moment, we're going to get started. My name is Jamira Queen. Again, I am 18 years old. I'm a senior at the Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, and I am a Heart Smiles Heartbeat.
Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Deaubrey Lewis. I am 16. I am also a Baltimore Polytech attendee, and I am a junior. I am a Healing Youth Alliance ambassador, Heart Smiles Heartbeat, and also a youth mentor.
Here is healing from substance use disorder in the African American community.
So, for our objectives today, participants will learn and understand ways in which your body can be affected physically if you don't take care of yourself mentally, learn more in depth of what substance use disorder is and how it is taking over and killing many of our African American communities, learn different coping mechanisms, resources such as hotlines, risk factors, and also early warning signs, understand what healing centered engagement is and how the African American community is using the concept to heal. And lastly, learn new African proverbs and understand how they are being interpreted within the African American community. Okay, so for our activity, we call this the Mind of Colors. So we will need 3 to 5 participants. This activity is not mandatory, but if you want to participate, you can feel free. You just have to raise your hand in the participants list, and we can unmute you, or you can either put it in a chat if you want to participate. So these are the steps. So you have to think of any color. Let's get those minds going. And once you have that color, you have to tell us what comes to mind when you think of that color, how that color makes you feel, what does this color remind you of, and if anything, what does the color symbolize? Okay, so I will start. The color that I'm thinking of is yellow. When what comes to mind when I think of this color is yellow daisies. And this color makes me feel happy because it's all bright and shiny. And this color kind of reminds me of the sun. And it doesn't really symbolize anything in particular. Jamira, would you like to give a jab at it?
Yes, of course. If I could think of any color, I would think of the color black. Black is my favorite color because it can stand on its own. It's neutral, and it also can make a huge statement. Black for me symbolizes your freedom and your ability to shine in any situation, and it just reminds me of just peace, freedom, and just everything that you can become, and any hopes that you have.
So we have a participant. Okay, my bad.
Hi.
Hi.
So the color that I think of is purple, and purple is one of my favorite colors. But whenever I think of purple, I think of royalty, I think of wealth. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much, Miss.
Christian. Okay, would anybody else like to go?
We have one in the chat from Crystal Parker. Blue, tranquility and peace. And they think of the ocean. Thank you for that. I love the color blue, by the way.
Oh yes. Okay, we have another one. They said pink, I think of Hello Kitty. It reminds me of my childhood. It symbolizes my happiness. Oh, that's so sweet. Okay, we have someone else. Green, outdoors, forest brings me peace. A lot of people said green. Lively peace, happy times. Okay, thank you all for participating. We will now move on.
Why is mental health important? Mental health is important because it is the foundation to everything your mental health can control the way you think, the way you feel, your physical activity, and what you can get done and what you cannot get done. Your mental health can lead Taking care of your mental health can lead you on this path of staying productive and fit.
Not taking care of your mental health can lead to things such as depression. With depression, it can lead to things such as you feeling sad all the time or you being locked in your room, isolated from the world. And when you are isolated, people don't really want to talk to anybody. You just locked up. And you also start to stress eat. You start to eat a lot of junk foods and things like that. So that's kind of where the diabetes come into play. Because once you eating all that junk, you getting the sugar and everything built up into your body, not really taking care of yourself. So, with the isolation and with the junk foods and everything, that can lead to other mental illnesses such as heart disease or stroke. Because while you are isolating yourself from the world, eating all that junk food, not really paying attention to anything, you really aren't getting any exercise or any water. So you are basically just sitting there eating junk food, not really caring about anything, and you are not really taking care of your mental health or yourself physically. So make sure that you take care of your mental health and take care of your physical.
For me, when I think of why mental health is important, I would say it's important because me personally, it's important because I know what it's like to not take care of your mental health, and I know for a lot of us in the community, we experience many different problems just because there are problems from the past that we have not yet healed from, and I know that's mainly because in our community, in our households, we are not really raised to speak on our mental health or just any acknowledge it in any way. So we just live on, still experiencing trauma or different pains in the past that we have not yet healed from. So that's why mental health is so important to me, and I plan to change those negative like negative generational curses regarding mental health and just the ideas of sharing about your mental health and the family. Mental illness. Mental illnesses are conditions of your mind, your mental health that affects a person's feelings, behaviors, and mood. It can also lead to different disorders such as depression, anxiety, bipolar, or long-lasting periods of sadness.
With mental health, a lot of us in the Black community face mental health, but they don't really talk about it. And they kind of go to different types of drugs and things like that just to basically cope with it because as Jamira said before, as a Black community, you are raised to like not really speak about your problems because like they say if you go to a therapist or someone, you basically are telling people your business. And people don't really like that. So as a youth, seeing people kind of like walking down the street and you see someone leaning over, laid out, it kind of makes you feel hopeless and helpless because it's like, well, I really want to help this person, but I can't because I know for sure that if I go to a stranger, I don't know how they will, feel about me just coming up to them. And not a lot of people like to listen from a youth perspective. And they also feel as though, well, why is this young person coming up telling me what I'm doing? They need to stay in the child's place. So as young people coming from Baltimore City, it kind of makes us feel helpless, and it makes us feel as though we can't really do anything about the problem, because if you don't want to help yourself, how can we help you? So that's kind of how we feel as youth.
Yes, and for me in the community, I see mental illnesses every single day. If I don't actually know the problem, you can observe different things around it. And a lot of times it always stems from depression. First it will start with depression and anxiety and everything. And a while after, like Bree mentioned, a substance use disorder. Depression leads to substance use disorder, crime, and just violence and different things of anger. So that's how mental illness is built in the community, and it creates a larger problem. That's why it's so important for us to have conversations like these to change that problem.
Substance use disorder. Substance use disorder occurs when a person's use of alcohol or any other substance begins to increase to an uncontrollable amount and starts to lead to health issues or problems at home, school, or work. Substance use disorders symptoms can include an increased use of alcohol, marijuana, nicotine, pharmaceuticals, which is medicine that is prescribed by a doctor, antidepressants, which are used to treat major depressive disorder, and many common drugs such as cocaine or meth that you may see being used within the African American communities.
In our community, substance use disorder it's seen every single day. Going like For me personally, I travel on the bus to go to work or to go to school when school was open, and you would just see drugs like being used on the corner, alcohol. Every corner you would see a liquor store. On my bus ride to my job, there's about 10 minutes, and I would see about 5 liquor stores through my travel to my job and everything. So substance use disorder is a huge issue in our community, and it's the reason. And substance use disorder leads to many different cycles in our community that we're so hard. It's so hard for us to break through from. And you will learn more about substance use disorder throughout this presentation. Symptoms of substance use disorder. Substance use disorder occurs with cravings, tolerance, and the inability to carry out certain obligations at work, home, or school. With cravings, you will see it as cravings are a power to desire and or consume drugs or alcohol or engage in activity. With cravings, a person will start to with cravings, a person will do anything in their power to get the drugs or alcohol just because their body feeds on it, and it's to the point that they need it, and they need it to cope with whatever they're trying to cope with, and they will do anything to get it, whether that being steal or just rob someone. They will do anything they can do to get the drugs or alcohol. With tolerance is the adaptation process characterized by the brain's attempt to accommodate abnormally high exposure to drugs or alcohol. In our community, I see tolerance to the point, tolerance for another example of tolerance is someone who will have to up their doses of drugs or alcohol because it's not affecting in the same way. Their pain may have got so unbearable that they need to up their dosage to take more of the drugs or alcohol. All right.
And also with the tolerance and the cravings, sometimes in the African American community, you kind of see like some families kind of break apart because like when people have a high tolerance and they have to keep up in their dosage, it's like they don't really care who they are hurting in the process. They all that matters is them getting that drug. So sometimes you may see people like steal things from their kids, like their money, steal their shoes, maybe their clothes, just to go out and sell it. And it's like no matter how valuable the item may be, they don't care because it's like they need this drug. So they will do whatever they have to just to get that drug, no matter how many people is hurting, no matter who is hurting, no matter what it is breaking apart. So now we'll be talking about substance use disorder in the African American community.
In many African American communities, there tends to be easy access to drugs and alcohol. Therefore, people tend to use drugs and alcohol to cope with their mental health. For many years, African Americans And the African American neighborhoods have been filled with drugs and alcohol, which some people use to cope with life's problems. After years of trying to cope with drugs and alcohol, it becomes an addiction or disorder that can lead to many different health problems. In our community, drugs and alcohol was introduced way back when as a social experiment, and then it became a bigger issue. So Bree is going to give you more examples on it, and then we will.
So, okay, so there's this thing called first of the month, and it's basically how where the drug dealers they basically are supplying their drugs to anybody on the street that needs it, and it's basically free. So every first of the month, people you may see people like forming in the alleys and stuff like that, and this is because the drug dealers are getting a new supply of any type of drug. They don't, some of them don't even know what the drug is, what the drug can do, the effects of it, or anything like that. And they are basically giving it to these people, and the people are basically using it because, as Jamila was saying, they needed to cope with things, or once they have to up their dosage, they don't care what the drug is. They need something to basically like make them feel good. And so this also kind of ties into with the easy access to drugs, because with this first of the month, as I said, it's free. So every first of the month, they know for sure where they can go at to get these drugs, how many they can get, and they don't even care about the effects of it because they don't know what the effects is. So if it kills them, they don't really care because they don't really know, and the drug dealers also don't know because they don't even know where they're getting the supplies from. They just want to keep getting the drugs. They don't even know where the drugs come from. So they're going to keep giving it out to people, no matter how effective the drug can be, no matter how deadly it can be.
Yes. And in the African American community, drugs and alcohol, it does not just affect a person's family or just affect the person. It affects the whole entire community. Since way back when crack was introduced inside our neighborhoods, it started to lead to mass incarceration, more poverty, and just the financial structure going down and the family structure going down. Substance use disorder is not just about someone using drugs or using alcohol, really any kind of pharmaceuticals. It's a bigger picture. When we talk about substance use disorder in the African American community, we are also talking about how it affects our whole entire city. It breaks up families, it breaks up households, and it just contributes to the whole entire generational crisis that we face in the city. In the community, in the African American community, I see how substance use disorder affects us and affects our whole entire community. Like when you think of it, a person who okay, I'm going to go back for you all before I even get into that topic. Back in the community, you would see how crack was introduced inside our neighborhood. Have This is an example. I'm going to paint you a picture. Okay. In our neighborhood, the black community back then in the 1990s and everything, or 1980s, wherever you want to really think of in your mind, think of a household that's already poor and already struggling, and not in the community around themselves is just breaking down around you. And then crack was injured, and the person is already depressed or just going through anything in general that they're really trying to get over. They are given drugs or alcohol, and then they use that to repeatedly, and it becomes an addiction to cope. Along that line of depression, and drugs and alcohol and depression, that leads to substance use disorder in our community going downhill. With substance use disorder, it's like a bigger picture because it can disrupt the whole entire family.
So now I will explain these pictures. Oh, my bad.
All right. Drugs and or alcohol use in the black community goes back into history when drugs was introduced, such as crack. The history of drugs and alcohol tells the whole story of the entire African American community, which develops problems and different stereotypes. As you can see in each photo, I'm going to give you all time to observe the photos as I'm explaining. You can see that each one of these pictures that have been taken across Baltimore City. And as I said before about the amount of liquor stores in the whole entire like community and the things that you see on a daily basis walking around. Great.
Okay, so now once you look at the pictures, you can kind of see the man leaning over and the lady leaning over and stuff like that. So when you go down Penn North, they call that, I guess, zombie land, because people, every time you see them, you kind of see them leaning over, and then people call those people zombies. So when you ride down your streets in Baltimore, you can see at least one person either leaning over or stretched out. And this also ties back into the easy access, because I guarantee you, once you go down any place in Baltimore, you can see a liquor store on every corner. It's when you go down my neighborhood, it's a liquor store right there, and then you go down the next block, it's another liquor store right there. So this also ties into the easy access, because it's like they are basically killing our black communities, because they are giving them so much stuff and ways to actually get the stuff for them. So if it's so many liquor stores on each corner and you see the first of the month, how as a community can we come together and fix this problem? How can we get the most of the liquor stores gone? How can we stop this first of the month thing? Like, we aren't really doing anything, and it's kind of like taking the youth is making us feel helpless again, because it's like, well, we want to do so much, but we don't have the help from the older people to actually help us, because they are kind of used to it. Because every time you see someone walking out, or a parent, or you in the parent, or you are in the car with your parent, and you see somebody walking and slouched over, your parent will say, they would just probably laugh or be like, well, that's something normal. And when you are younger, you don't really understand it. But as you start to grow older, you can kind of understand, like, this person is really going through something, like this person really needs help. And as youth, we don't really have the influence or the help to really help anybody, because we don't have the help from the older people.
Yes. And as you look more into the photos, you can see around it, the neighborhood around it is not really that great at all either. And I want to go more into how it really affects our community. Substance use disorder, it takes family members out of their household, and it takes family members out of their household, and it disrupts the whole entire family cycle. If you really think of it, in many parts of our community, we have you see maybe someone selling drugs or selling doing really anything in their community to really get by, and mostly you will see our young men with our black young men involved in crime, violence, or just the selling of drugs or alcohol. And that is because of many problems which led from substance use disorder. Like I talked about before, how crack was introduced into our neighborhoods, and we are still facing the effects of it now to this day. If you think of the how the whole entire crack epidemic had an effect on mass incarceration, it also it affected our community in a way that it took fathers out of their household. In their household, it made it harder for mothers and just different older family members to grow and just advance their whole entire household. And that's how and that was the case for many parts of our community. And so therefore our whole entire family structure went down, and our neighborhoods became more impoverished because we did not have the proper structure, the proper representation in our community to prosper. So along with not having a father or a proper guardian in the household, or having someone using drugs or alcohol, that comes with the decline of family structure and the increase of poverty and violence in our community. And as you can see, once the family structure is disrupted, the community is disrupted, and everything around you, you will do anything to get some kind of hope and some kind of security. And that's how mental illnesses form, and depressions form, and also substance use disorder forms. And we're also going to give examples about how we see it in the community. As growing up when I was younger, about the age of 7, my grandmother, she worked at a hotel near like Lexington Market area, just a downtown area. If you all are familiar where the Royal Farms Arena is, we would just go on her break time to go to get to the Lexington Market to get like our favorite thing, a half and half in a chicken box. We would do that all the time, and it was just like it used to be like a calming experience for us. But I would always get kind of afraid going down there, because it was like, again, like how Bree talked about the Penn North Station with Zombieland. You would see someone using drugs or alcohol 24/7 just around Lexington Market, and you would see someone maybe overdosing or leaning over or doing like the lane from using drugs and alcohol. And just imagine, at me as a 7-year-old girl seeing that growing up, just imagine like the effect that it had on me. At first, I really didn't understand what it was. I just knew that I was just scared, and I didn't really want to see it again. And I knew it was something that I really shouldn't have been seeing. So that's why it's so important to me, because I want to change the ideologies around that, and I just want to change the scenery for the next Black girls or next Black boys or anyone in our community that will be seeing that.
So now we'll be talking about our experiences with substance use disorder. So when I was like a little younger than what I am now, maybe like around 11 or 12, I was walking down the street and I kind of seen my mom's friend, and she was basically like, snorting something out of a plastic baggie with a man next to her. And it kind of made me feel like sad because it was like I didn't know what to do at the time, and I didn't really tell anyone because I was so young and I didn't know what was going on. And so after like the story kind of got out to my friend, she kind of was telling me like how she felt and how her mom was basically not in the house for a really long time, or like she would come in really late, and it was kind of affecting the house to where her mom wasn't there to basically like, get her ready for school, feed the family and things like that. And so she was kind of taking care of her and her siblings on her own. And it's like that kind of opened up my eyes more and made me understand like substance use disorder is really, really real. Mental health is really real. And it's like I didn't know what to do at the time, but now I do. And it's like I kind of realize now, like, you can't really just look at people and say, well, this person is okay. You have to really, ask them, like, are you okay? And it's kind of like, it kind of made me realize now. That's why I kind of ask like a lot of adults too, like, are you okay? I know I'm young, but if you need me, you can talk to me. I'm always here. That's what I do to all of my friends also, because I know now getting in this field with higher, it's like mental health, you never know what the person may be going through, because you can't really like tell exactly, because the person could be smiling every day and the person could be crying every night.
And yes, and with like Bree just gave a wonderful example, and I will share my example too. But I wanted to give you all this quote again. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. And that is a quote by Maya Angelou. And that quote has a lot of significance to me because I've experienced living in a household with someone with substance use disorder. No one really like knows my story or knows why I like really go so hard, but I'm going to share it with you all because I am now at a point in my life that I'm comfortable enough to share that experience and share how it changed me in a way. Growing up, I lived in a household with my mom. Well, it was a single household before. First, she was like married and everything, but then once that kind of like went downhill and then bills start piling up around the time of elementary school, the whole entire dynamic of my household changed. My mother started using alcohol to just cope with everything. Even though she was at work every day, every night, even doing double shifts, she used alcohol to cope with the depression or just everything that she really experienced. And that changed the whole entire like foundation of our household. It kind of like things just went downhill. It would be good days, it would be bad days. And as me growing up as like an elementary school student trying to just grow and everything, I used to see that on a daily basis, and it just changed my whole entire like my life growing up. And with seeing that growing up, I used to not really know what to do or like how to like change those things. So I would just kind of like blame myself in a way, and I wasn't really sure why she did those things until the bright side, until I was able to see representation with my mentor and therapist. They told me how depression and anxiety how her depression led up to her with using substance use disorder. And that's why I'm so passionate about showing awareness of mental health, because if that could have been prevented if she would have had someone to maybe talk to more about those issues and everything. So that's why I go hard and promote mental health in the community.
So now we'll get into early warning signs and risk factors. So
Here,
with
here are the early warning signs and risk factors of someone with mental illness. The early warning signs include feeling numb, like nothing else matters. And when I say that, I mean not having the same effect, not having the same appreciation, or just the same feelings as something that used to happen in the past, you would begin to isolate yourself. You would start using drugs or alcohol more, like with substance use disorder. You would begin to have more anger and the inability to perform daily activities.
Okay, so with the risk factors, you can be growing up in a household with drug or alcohol abuse. I mean, could be like your family member, anyone. Early childhood trauma could be maybe like rape or abuse. Long stay in hospital with a severe medical condition. That could be anything like maybe like someone has cancer or something like that. Childhood abuse, as I said, like with the abuse and also the rape and things like that. A history of mental illnesses in the family, with that could be with anyone. Living in an area filled with poverty, and that's kind of like towards the black communities, because you know a lot of people are living with poverty and they don't really know like how to get out of it and what to do, because it's like no one really has a lot of help with that. And military or fighting in wars, and that could be like your uncle, your brother, or someone like that. Okay, so how can you help someone struggling with substance use disorder? Number one, do not judge that person. You have to make them feel comfortable. And this is also a tip for many therapists or like someone that is working with kids in like a school, like a guidance counselor or someone, because I know for sure when if I'm talking to someone, I want them to actually listen and make me feel like I'm a person and not just like it's their job to do this. I want them to actually make me feel like they are listening and understand where I'm coming from. um the second one is listen, understand like the person was actually going through something and they came to you, so you have to listen. Even if the person cries, just make sure that you are there, give them the shoulder cry on. Just they are trying to vent to you. Give reassurance, let the person know that whatever they are going through, it will be okay. Let them know that they are not alone. And also help them seek help, maybe get them to someone like a therapist or a social worker, just someone that they can talk to if you can't really help them.
Yes. And Bree gave you examples of how you can help someone with struggling with substance use disorder. And I can help give you examples on how can you help someone who if you're a mental health provider, how can you help someone in a household or living with someone with substance use disorder? I will always say to this day and even back then how it helped me. I used to have therapists and mentors who would take me away from it. If you're a young person, I can speak from the young person's perspective because I experienced it. But as for me, it was the fact that they used to take me outside of my house. And in our sessions, they didn't always talk about Jameer, what happened at home today, what's going on today. They will focus on the brighter side because when you're in a situation like that, you don't want to always talk about that. You're trying to get away from that. And when you recenter their focus into something greater, into something that's going to, to bring them to a higher level, that's when it really changes. That's when it really changes them because more about what it really what's going on at home is not really going to change things. But when you become representation and when you provide them access to everything outside of their zip code, it brings them to a whole different level. And it brought me to a whole different level. And then also you want to always make sure that the children know that it's not their fault and that it's the person with substance use disorder that their problem and their battle to get through. But as a mental health provider and a therapist, you just be supportive for them. And if you all want, and I know that we're on a time limit here, but if you all wanted to talk to me or just any pointers, if you're a mental health provider or just anyone in general, you can just email me. You will see my email at the end of the slide if you wanted to add anything.
Okay, so now we'll talk about ways to cope with mental illness and or substance abuse. Speak to a therapist or social worker, and we can also provide a few hotlines or anybody that you need to talk to at the end. Surround yourself with positive people, maybe like your friends or your family. Try new hobbies, something that you don't usually do, maybe like going on a hike, maybe like going on a bike ride, something. Redirect your attention to something positive. Maybe go watch your favorite TV show. Go be around something that actually brings you positivity. Do something that makes you happy, such as drawing or painting. That's kind of one of my big things. Start journaling or writing down your thoughts. That's also something that I do. I write my feelings down in my notes, and I kind of like, go back once I kind of like start feeling better, and I kind of reflect on like, well, I was going through this then, but how am I reflecting now, and how am I better? How did I get out of that situation? And that's kind of some things that I do.
Me personally, to cope with like mental illnesses or like whenever I'm depressed, I notice my patterns start with me like just going away from every activity. Like my when we list the things earlier, isolation for me is always like my main thing. I stop focusing and I start to isolate myself. But now I do journal entries and I can just listen to music. Resilience, the capacity to recover from difficult situations and toughness. In our community, we are very resilient, and here's some ways why.
Now we'll be talking about healing centered engagement and how it is connected within the African American community.
What is healing centered engagement? Healing centered engagement is a strength based approach which advances the view of healing and which recenters cultural and group assets as a feature in the African American community. Healing centered engagement, it's a form of mentorship and a form of collective work and collective healing as a whole. And here's what healing centered engagement looks like.
So kind of in the pictures, you can kind of see like how the females are kind of like, laughing, enjoying themselves basically. So this is kind of also connects to ways like you can cope. So basically surround yourself with people that actually bring you positivity, that make you happy. And then in the second picture, you can kind of see the young men kind of coming together, basically like unity and forming together. And basically they kind of like being leaders, bringing out leadership.
Yes. All right. And with healing centered engagement, your connection with ancestors, rituals, and spirituality and knowledge of history is used in the process of healing. You will learn more about like what happened in the past, which is why are we this way now? And with the example we talked about in the slide with substance use disorder, for if you were trying to heal from that situation, an example of how that would be seen is you're being more introduced and more informed about how the crack being introduced inside neighborhoods affected the whole entire like poverty and just substance use disorder as a whole. And that is an example of what it looks like with connections with ancestors in history. With encouraging oh,
Build upon their experiences, knowledge, and curiosity as positive traits. That's basically people coming together and basically, like reflecting on the issues and the things, and basically like bringing positivity and bringing light to the communities, and basically coming back together as one.
and most of all with healing sensory engagement, it's mentorship. If you can really take anything away from what healing sensory engagement is, it's full on mentorship and just giving someone access to you and access to things that are like not surrounding them. You are giving someone access to the whole entire world and everything that happened in the past to get to where we are now. Here's an African proverb: the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. When I say the African proverb, I'm talking about everything that we talked through this whole entire slide. The reasons why we face substance use disorder, mental illnesses, crime, violence in our community is because of many things that happened in the past, and we're not feeling no warmth, no wholeness, no unity from our community or just anyone in general. So we're doing everything in our power to get to get some kind of warmth and everything. So when I talk about burning it down to feel its warmth, that's what I mean. Like in our community, you would see someone selling drugs or alcohol because they're doing whatever they can do to get to their next level. That means providing for their family and everything. So we're burning it down, literally burning it down to feel its warmth, to feel some kind of wholeness. And thinking of this African proverb, would any of you all like to unmute yourself or put anything in the chat? What does it mean when you hear this quote? If you all are comfortable, no takers, any takers?
We have one in the chat. It said, "This one goes deep. It means to me that we are all responsible to each other." Yes.
Yes, definitely. We are all responsible for each other. With a lot of African proverbs, that means the same thing. We're all responsible for each other. Everything that we do has an effect on each other. And if like with this quote, if you wanted to reverse this quote, if we built together and unified together, we can change many things. And all right. We have one more before we go. Children and family, children and everyone needs to feel loved and have a sense of belonging. Yes, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for that.
We have another one. To me, it means that we are making the most of our resources. Villages are made up of shops, schools, stores, tools, things that things that benefit the community for a long time, but we don't use what we have properly, honestly. Yes. Thank you so much for everyone who participated.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for everyone. If there are any questions or comments, feel free to raise your hand or put that in the chat box. And here are our emails and our contact information to reach out to us. You can reach out to me anytime. I'm always available, and I'm always eager to make change in the community or just give my perspective as a youth. I'm not shy at all, and anything you can do, it won't really make me shy. I'm not really a shy person.
Yes.
Jamir and Diabre, there was a question in the chat earlier that I think y'all might like to answer. It was from HYA 2020. I'm not too sure who that is, but the question was, what do you think is needed from the older generation to make you guys' journey successful in starting the healing?
Honestly, I would say support. I feel as though a lot of young people feel as though like a lot of adults don't really give support. They just really brush the situations off. That's why mental health isn't really talked about. That's why young people really go through like a lot of things and it's not really talked about. I know for sure like a lot of people that I know suffer with depression and it's not really talked about because everyone really brushes it off. And it's like within the Black families and things like that, I know for sure we don't really talk about that because it's like they don't I don't really know, like I feel as though like the older people don't really understand mental health and they don't really understand these things. And I feel as though if we actually sat down and have a real conversation about mental health, it would kind of bring light to a lot of situations and it would give youth basically a voice.
And I think also to help us become healers and to help heal, we need a form of transparency and we need to be comfortable with each other to talk about those conversations and have those deep conversations. And then I'll like, and with healing and becoming healers, I feel like if you're talking to like someone who's growing up in the inner city community experiencing violence on a daily basis, you need to take them outside of that shell and takes them outside of their zip code to give them some sort of representation. And once they see what's out there, they will become like bigger than that, and they will start to change many more things that's happening. All right. Are there any more questions or comments? Feel free to raise your hand or chat box, please. Okay.
We had a question. They said, which next for both of you? How will you take this to your careers? Honestly, okay, so let me tell y'all. So I never really thought about even pursuing a career in mental health, but once I kind of got into higher, it kind of made me open up my eyes more. And it's like, well, I know for sure I faced a few of these things. So it's like, why not pursue a career in this and why not really, get the youth on board and really talk about and have more of these conversations? Because I know for sure the adults now, it's kind of past their time to really, get involved. So it's like I have the opportunity now to basically, talk about it, get people to jump on board and understand things and basically provide a better world for the future generations.
Mm-hmm. Me personally, first it started off as like me doing like protests and everything because I really wasn't really understanding what is the root of all things and everything. And then I became more into like mental like health and everything. So that's when I started my mentorship. But my career goals are to get my MSW, a master's degree, master's in social work. And after that, I plan to open a private practice of social workers, mentors, therapists, and everyone like in the community and community leaders to provide representation in our community and just work with us on that level of mental health and just change the whole entire dynamic of the community. I plan to be that one going into school buildings or just being the mentor, like the nice, pretty mentor. I've always had great mentors and great mentors and great therapists. So I plan to become that because I know the effects that it can really have on someone. If I didn't have a mentor or therapist, I don't know really where I would be right now. So I give like a lot of my credit to my mentors and therapists. That's why I want to become a mentor and therapist.
We had another question. Are you two available to do this presentation for other groups? Yes, of course. If you need us, you can just hit any one of our Gmails. We respond, and we are always open to do presentations.
Yes, and at the end of this presentation, if you all go to the breakout to the whole entire main room, you will get more information on how you can book in the future and everything. And as you can see our emails, if you haven't already copied it down, you can definitely reach out and we can give you feedback on how you can move to the next level.
All right. Thank you all for attending. If there's no more questions, I'm going to put in the chat the link to the satisfaction survey. Hopefully, you all can fill it out for us so that we know how we did and that we can stay in touch with you and go forward for next time. So here's that link. And then after you take a look at that, the following link will be the link to return to the home base room. So satisfaction survey and then return to home base. Thank you all.
Thank you all again, and thank you all for sharing everything out in the chat box. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you all for listening to our stories.